The Leake Mound Interpretive Trail is sponsored by the Federal Highway Administration, the Georgia Department of Transportation, and the University of West Georgia.
Hi, and welcome to the Leake Mounds Interpretive Trail podcast series. If you're following along on the trail, this podcast corresponds to the time travel panel. I'm Marcus Toft.
And I'm Jennifer Teeter. And in this podcast, we're going to branch out into global history, and we're going to put the Leake Mounds into a global context.
Many people are familiar with later American Indian groups, but don't know quite as much about the people who lived during North America's prehistory.
In prehistory, it's a really large time period. It goes from the dinosaurs up until when the Europeans arrived in North America.
Yeah, basically prehistory is the time before there were written records.
Yeah, and because there's no written record, it can be difficult to figure out where the Leake Site fits in global history.
But even though there's no written record, we know from the archaeological record that the Leake Site was occupied from about 300 BC to AD 650.
Okay, well, let's talk about what else was going on in the world at that time.
Let's use the ancient Greeks and Romans as a reference point for placing the Leake Site into a global context.
Okay, well, we can start with the Hellenistic period in ancient Greece, which started after the death of Alexander the Great.
And during that period, the ancient Greeks experienced a boom in art, literature, theater, math, and science. Some of the Greek sculptures that we're more familiar with were created during this time, such as the Venus de Milo.
It was a transitional period between classical Greece and the Roman Empire, which brings us to the Romans.
Some of the most well-known Roman emperors lived during the Leake Site occupation. You have Julius Caesar, Mark Antony, who married Cleopatra, Caligula, Nero, Trajan, and Hadrian.
And there were many more emperors during this time. Those are just some names that you might be familiar with. During this time, Rome completed numerous building projects, fought multiple wars, and even interacted with the Chinese.
In 312 BC, so just before the Leake Site was occupied, the Romans began the Appian Way, which was a major roadworks project that connected Rome to southern Italy.
They also began issuing coins in 280 BC.
And the Rosetta Stone was inscribed in 196 BC, and the Rosetta Stone linked the cultures of Rome, Greece, and Egypt.
If these societies occurred at the same time, why do you think there's such a difference in their development? I mean, the Romans had currency, trade, and written language.
Yeah, that's a great question, Jennifer. But when we get into this, it's sort of like comparing apples to oranges.
Yeah, and in other podcasts we're going to talk about this, that the archaeological record shows that the Leake Site had the same things as Greece and Rome and Egypt, such as trade, art, religion, architecture. We just don't see it as much because there's not a written record of it.
The environments of Greece, Italy, and America encourage different rates of development. You can think of the land as a reservoir of resources, and you can begin to look at the different resources that different societies had available to them.
Yeah, so societies with a greater reservoir of resources would have the ability to grow at a faster rate.
Exactly. Societies that build food surpluses are then able to focus on activities other than just finding a sustainable food source. But I also think we should point out that North America hasn't been occupied for as long as other parts of the world, and so when humans first migrated here, they were essentially starting over. Now, of course, they brought familiar traditions, but they had to adapt those to a new environment.
If you want to know more about what was happening in the world when the Leake Site was occupied, check out our timeline at the Leake Mounds Interpretive Trail website.
Thanks for listening.
The Leake Mounds Interpretive Trail project was done in partnership with the City of Cartersville and Bartow County. Music by Tommy Wildcat.